Hey guys, it's Nicole Eaton with the Rock Your Soul book and podcast, where we talk about how to hack your mindset, grow your intuition, and live your best life. You can support this podcast by subscribing, leaving a positive review, and screenshot and sharing on social media. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
I am so excited to introduce somebody who I've recently met, but you guys are going to love her. Her name's Beth Geddio. She is the owner of State of Being. Their affirmation candles. They're so good. If you were at Clarity Connects, then you were able to smell the goodness of them. But welcome, Beth.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I cannot wait to see what we dive into.
Yeah. So I said to Beth beforehand, like, we're just going to wing it. We're just going to see what shows up today because I know she's an incredible speaker and has so much to share with you guys. So, I trust the universe enough to open that up to see what you guys need to hear today. But so Beth, you own State of Being Co.
I fully believe that there are many different facets and ways that we can all elevate our state of being. So right now that is through candles and that is our focus. But I just know that there are so many different options and ways we can go. We are a company that just looks to help you elevate your state of being through many different facets. But for right now, that facet is through scent and positive affirmations.
I love the way I actually read you guys Beth's candles were featured in Forbes, and so it just talked about the power of pairing an affirmation with a scent. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So basically, when we think things, our brains send out a frequency, and thoughts obviously are very powerful. So first things first, just thinking and speaking that powerful thought is one level, if you will, of creating that new positive thought. However, what I was discovering was that when you include other senses and when you include your heart, the frequency of your heart is 60 times stronger than the frequency of your brain. And when you include that, you're now kind of elevating that whole thought process into a much higher level. And then what I realized was when we smell things, it actually triggers memory, the way that our brains operate. And so if you've ever had that thought or said that thing that was like, oh, that smell reminds me of making cookies with her, or, oh, the smell of fresh cut grass reminds me of something, something, something. So basically what I've done with these candles is I've connected this scent with the affirmation. And actually, I haven't done that. You will do that. So every time you go up to the candle, you state the affirmation that's on the label, and then you get to go about your day. But because our brains are wired that they are connecting scent with something, now every time you smell that candle, after just about a few days, your brain has already made that connection. And now you'll walk by the candle on day 4, maybe feeling a little bit stressed, maybe feeling like you're not worthy or like you're not enough. You're going to smell the scent of that candle, and your brain is going to remind you in an instant, because it's wired to do that, that you are worthy, that you are enough, that you are radiant, and you don't even have to think about it consciously. So as someone that has done like affirmation cards for a really long time, and like I had my routine and I would get up in the morning and I would try to do them, but then what happened was I got busy and I would forget. And so I realized that like when I got busy and when I didn't put in that intentional time, my mental health and my like positive thoughts would kind of start to dwindle. And so I realized that these candles were a way that I could do that without actually having to do work. So that's how we can actually start to help train your thoughts and actually help impact them through the scent of the candle.
I'm all about finding like little hacks to make my life
It's such
easier
a
and to make
hack.
my, like make my mental health work easier just because I'm so dedicated to that. And I know not everybody, like I work for myself. So I do have my like morning routine built into my life. Like that is part
Mhm.
of my work day, to be perfectly honest. Like I do these things to take care of myself as part of my work day because I know I'm more productive after. So I love that you've been, created something that you only need a handful of moments to really create that mind and smell connection. And from what I know about like the olfactory sense is that it really doesn't have a filter. It's like one senses that doesn't have that processing filter from smell to brain, where your eyes look at something and it like has to take a second to see what's really there. Your olfactory sense, your sense of smell, doesn't have to do that. So it's actually a quicker, easier way once you integrate that meaning of that smell. So I'm all for like making little moments and making things easier for myself.
Yeah, we have way too many things going on to, I feel like, add stuff into our day. So I just feel like it's one of those things. Like, if I could find, I was all about finding hacks, I was all about finding things that were effective, all kinds of stuff like that. And when I found these candles, I was like, wait, this is a really cool idea. Because obviously, like, I was doing it before I even made the product. And then I was like, wait a minute, like, what if I created this like intentionally? So I went to go buy a product like this, and nothing really existed. And when that happened, I was like, okay, well, if it doesn't exist, it must be my thing, and I must take it, and I must run with it, and it's my duty. And if I don't do it, somebody else will. So, um,
I love
yeah,
that though, because a lot of people see a hole and they don't know how to fill it. And you were seeing this hole in, this is what I need. This is what I think will help me. How am I going to do this? How am I going to create this so the other people who like me don't have as much time or fall off the wagon easier? Like, how am I going to make it so it's doable for them?
yeah, and I think I just like I lived a life where, oh my gosh, my aunt was like so. I don't is ingenuitive a word? I don't even know, but basically like innovative. She's innovative.
Yes,
And
perfect.
she would talk about all these times about how like she had an idea for like pull-ups before pull-ups were a thing because she was a mom and she was like, and she basically like she had like so many different ideas that like, and I didn't consciously know this, I just thought about it like afterwards, but she had so much regret about not pursuing these ideas. She had them, she thought they were good ones, but she didn't know like how to go after it, how to make it happen. And I like would see that all the time. And I think like my aunt is like one of the like smartest, most innovative people I've ever met. But she never like went after it. And so she, never had a life where she was like seeing success from her ideas. And then I was diving into personal development books, and my sister actually got me a book. It's called Big Magic.
I was just thinking of Big Magic. I swear. I was like, this is so Big Magic moment. This is
Yeah,
absolutely what
and
that is.
I think I read that book. Oh my gosh, it was in my old house. I think I was still married at the time. It was like, so gosh, it had to have been at least like 6 or 7 years ago. I read this book, which would have been at least 5 years before I even came up with this concept. And like as soon as I had this idea, the words from that book that basically said like if you don't take action on this idea, someone else will, because it was given to you for a reason. It was given to you because it needed to kind of come into this universe as a thing. And so like those those words just haunted me of like if I don't take action on this, somebody else will. And I had this idea, so I have to go after it. And so I did, basically, and here we are.
I love a good moment where somebody does take that creative idea and bring it into fruition, because it's just a reminder that, I know you've been through some challenging times in your life. And I think that sometimes people look at a company like yours and is like, oh, she just must have, built that right up so quickly. And, I think that when people see from the outside, I know I've had people message me and be like, oh, you make it look so easy to build a brand. And they're not, they're not accounting for maybe the doubts you've had, or the experiences or traumas or issues that you've encountered along the way that you've pushed through to get where
Mm,
you are.
hmm Yeah, it has been So, I mean, just in the 2 years of even just like launching this company, and honestly, like, I had to push through the death of my dad and the divorce from my husband, which has kind of led me to the journey of self development and that kind of stuff, which, led me to even coming up with this company. But even in the course of coming up with this company, we're coming up on the 2 year anniversary. And I will remember literally about like 3 months ago, I had just brought on a business partner. He is helping me with the brand and the clarity and like coming up with videos. And we're talking about the founder story and just really how to like kind of describe this brand. And oh my gosh, this poor guy, we were like sitting outside talking about it. And we were talking about like really how I was going to tell my story in this condensed way. And so, like, one of the defining moments of this was through my divorce. I was crying on the bathroom floor, and it was like a few months in, and I realized I was like, I am absolutely done with this. I am done with crumbling. I am done with crying. I am done with like these collapsing sessions of tears that are just like coming out of my body. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And like, and we were talking about that moment like so often because like that was my critical moment. Like that was my moment where I decided that I was going to build my life back up again, and I was going to stop being a victim to a divorce, which happens to so many people. It's just when it happened to me, it felt like it was crumbling my life.
Yeah, for
um
sure.
and so I just like we were talking about that moment over and over again, and I just sat there and I just started bawling, and I like the tears just like came out of me. I immediately like I felt so bad for him because he's sitting there and now he feels bad because he was like, I'm so sorry, we're just like talking about this like big life-changing stuff like it's nothing, because we're trying to find like the right words to say on the script and all of that kind of stuff. And I was, and he felt like he was being insensitive. And I was like, no, no, no. Like like, it's not you, and it's not insensitive, and it's not this thing. It's that I'm sitting here a year and 9 months into this company, struggling, still trying to turn a profit, still trying to get this thing to work, still trying to be out of startup mode. And I just like sat there and I just started crying because I was just like, God, like, I need this thing to turn. Like, I know that this is my purpose. I know that I'm supposed to be doing this, but I'm running out of funds. I'm running out of like ways to do that. Like, I don't know how to do that on my own anymore, and I need help.
Yeah.
And so, so that was just a few months ago. And honestly, like that, I just feel like that was like such a clear breaking point of, again, just like needing help, needing to really just take a step back and just like look at it. But yeah, I mean, all of these things like featured in Forbes and, featured in Glamour and like all of that stuff, like it's the proof that this is a good product. I just need to do the right things and stay the right course to get more people to know about it and to, really start to be able to use this as a tool like I did, because it's not something that we're used to. It is more of a new idea. And so, yeah, definitely not all sunshines and butterflies over here, even though we're selling positive affirmation candles.
Yeah. Well, I think the process of success and the process of personal development are these big moments where they're up and down. I actually just made like an Instagram post this morning, and I was like, this new like phase, this final quarter is up leveling and breaking old habits and breaking neural pathways that suck, but it's also finding grace in the process, because
Mm-hmm.
we always will have who we desire to be and where we desire our successes to go. But there's always those moments where, like, I was telling Beth this morning, she was like, are we doing a video or are we doing just an audio? And I'm like, listen, I played 6 games of softball. I haven't played softball in 20 years. I played 6 games this weekend, and walking up the stairs is not my friend. So we're gonna go easy. We're still gonna do the job. We're still gonna do the work, but we're also gonna have grace for like, that was my body hurts from literally like my head to my toes. But like there are some days where you're going to nail it. And like I also think your belief in where you're going, even if it doesn't look how you envision it to be yet, and continuing to believe. I think that is the area people struggle with the most, is continuing to believe in what they know to be true for themselves and for their future, and not having that external evidence yet.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Like, how do you remind yourself and build up that confidence when you're having those points where you're, sitting and having a conversation with somebody, reflecting on the past, and how do you move through that space?
Yeah, well, I will tell you that there's a meditation that I listen to. It's by Bob Proctor, and it's actually an abundance meditation. That literally you search Bob Proctor's abundance meditation, and I'm sure it'll pop up in multiple different forms. But one of the things that he says in that meditation is something about like coming to the understanding that you will see it twice, whatever that is, once in your mind and then once again in real life. Something like that. Again, I'm like in the meditation state right now, or like during that time. So it's something close to that. But basically, just this idea that you have to see it in your mind first before it will ever come into fruition. And so I have just dedicated myself into seeing these candles in people's homes. I mean, I've probably imagined so many different homes and and locations where it could possibly be, and so many different women of all shapes, sizes, colors, of all ages, and just seeing these candles being in their home, being that moment that they get to take for themselves, that moment of self-care where they are just for that moment transformed out of whatever stresses they have. And when I tell you, I see those things, like I can actually see them in my mind when I close my eyes, and I hold on to that. And I hold on to that as we run through the day. I hold on to that as I'm crying to come up with a founder's message. Like I hold on to that impact that these candles are having, and I see it in my mind first, and then I allow it to see it in real life. And the other thing is, like, I see things in my mind that I am fully committed to fully visualizing that I may not ever see in real life, but I'm okay with that, because seeing those visualizations and going through that process is honestly what keeps me motivated to show up every day. Like those things that happen in my imagination, like, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if Oprah had my candle in her home? Like I'm like, I want to be the candle in Oprah's bathroom. I don't even care that I'm in the bathroom. Just want to be in her home. But it's like when I see that, like that is the way that I motivate myself. And so, will I ever be in Oprah's bathroom, and will I ever see that candle? I have absolutely no idea. But seeing it, visualizing it in Oprah's bathroom is what gets me so excited to wake up and to do this again and again and again. And so I think that that's like a huge thing that I had to learn, honestly, in going in my journey from being a type A person that needs to be realistic and have a plan and have everything like itemized, to a dreamer, frankly. And giving myself the permission to dream bigger than my brain can even comprehend has been, I think, the true game changer. When, as a little girl, I was told not to dream too big because people were trying to protect me from disappointment. Yes. And it was like, and I think that honestly, going through hard times, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, like when you go through hard times that are like tragic, that are life changing, you're like, I can handle the disappointment of not meeting a big goal. Like, we got it. We're fine. We got
worse things have happened. Yeah, it's that ability to minimize the impact. I think sometimes, I've been thinking so much about having really big goals. I have some really big goals and some big things moving in my life right now. And part of me is like super excited. I can see it for myself. And then part of me is like, what if I get tied to this vision and it doesn't work out, And so there's always that catch-22 of when you become a big dreamer, or when you start to believe in things for yourself that other people might think are outrageous or laughable or whatever, it can be this back and forth process and this back and forth energy of like wanting and deeply believing in it and seeing it for yourself. And then that little voice inside of you that wants to keep you small, that wants to play it safe, that wants to not be disappointed. And like you said, there's really worse things that could happen. And I think the messages that I've been getting a lot lately are that life is fleeting. Like, why not fucking go for it? And I also, the other thing that you were talking about that triggered is
I watched a TikTok the other day. Still not sure who this guy was. It's not somebody I follow. It was just on my For You page. And he was saying, I decided to be consistent in posting on YouTube. And he was like, I was getting 11 views. He's like, I had 11 views, but I was consistent. And he's like, every time I thought, this video is awesome, like 11 views. And he was like, but I kept posting. And he goes, I would love to be like, yeah, it just blew up one day, but it didn't. I kept staying at 11 views, but I kept posting. And he said, come to find out, one of those 11 views was Oprah. And she had connected with somebody I had worked with in the past who had who referred me to her. And so even though he was getting 11 views, there was one person in there who wanted to connect with him and change his life, and it was fucking Oprah. So like he ended up getting this big reach out and is now a co-host on one of her new networks, with her on one of her new networks. And so it's just like the rate we think things have to happen, or how we believe they might have to happen for us to get there, aren't always how they happen. It is those small moments and those small commitments to yourself and commitments to your growth and commitments to your company, or in commitment to your vision, that make the difference between being a big dreamer and, I think, seeing it come to fruition. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it totally makes sense. And one thing that you just said that like triggered for me was this idea that, and I am, I have a very strong faith, a Christian faith. So yesterday in church, we were even just talking about this idea, like that God is able to do something suddenly.
Yes.
Where we think it's going to take a lot of time. And so like just this idea that like he had 11 views. So I can only imagine like in his brain, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be doing this forever if this is my growth and like whatever else. And it was like in an instant, he found out that he was gonna be able to connect with Oprah in an instant, and he had absolutely no idea. And so I just love that as like the analogy of like, hold that vision, keep it big, hold it true. And so whether it's the disappointment in that vision is going to shape us and mold us, like, the disappointment of not getting that vision, and that's going to shape us and mold us into a stronger person that is more resilient, that is able to face a more challenging, struggle that comes, longer down the road. Or that vision is meant to hold us there so that we stay, motivated and can keep going. And it never comes to fruition, but it's there as our motivation to keep going. Our visions are given to us for a reason. And so, I think that it's so important that like we just hold on to them for whatever purpose they serve. They don't have to be the thing that becomes an actual reality. They can be the thing that gets us up every day. So
I love that, because I do think that sometimes we get a vision in our head and like, we decide that one thing has to be our success, right? Is that, okay, if I'm in Oprah's bathroom, that's how I know I've made it, right?
But come on, if you're in Oprah's bathroom, we would not be upset, right?
No. Like, I just want to hang out there. She doesn't even have to be home. No, I'm just kidding. That's weird.
That's what I'm saying, man.
But
just I think candle in her bathroom.
Yeah. I think that sometimes when we get the visions, that it guides us to where we actually need to be in the process. So I think that sometimes the visions don't necessarily come true, but they push us in the direction of the right people to meet, or the right people to connect with, or the right things to uncover about yourself. I know, like, for me, owning a business, and I'm anticipating it's similar for you, but for me, owning a business has pushed every button in my like personality, of like doubting myself, and then feeling on top of the world, and then doubting myself, and then like I've learned so much just skill wise. I can build a website in 10 minutes. Like, I can create ads. I know, like, there's so many things that I never thought I would do that I've had to learn how to do because I've owned a business. And there's so many parts of my personality that I don't think would have unlocked if I didn't have the struggles from owning a business. Like, I think that vision makes you who you're meant to be, whether you end up at that end goal anyway. But sometimes I think if we keep pushing past those hard moments, that we do get there. Like, I'm just a firm believer in like a little bit of that grandiose big dreamer thinking on a regular basis. Like, I believe that those like things are possible for anybody who has that call in their heart. I also want to acknowledge that sometimes, like, for me, success has looked so different over the years. Like, I used to want to be like, oh, I want to be like famous and just be out there in the world. And for me now, like, success looks like being able to impact lives in my home quietly. And you know, I like to have my privacy, and I like to share things that I feel called to share, not forced to share. And like, for me, success looks so differently than it used to. And so for
Mm,
people who are like, I don't really have these big dreams, I also want to acknowledge that whatever your version of contentment, peace, and joy is also
mm-hmm.
valid and okay. Because I think sometimes we get caught up. Like, there was a period of time after I moved where I was like, I don't have a big dream for myself right now. And I don't know what to do with that, because I feel like a failure if I don't have something large I'm going after.
Mm,
And it sort of changed the structure of how I define success in general. And I accepted
mm-hmm.
that. And now I've got a big dream again. So, like, we're back at it. But
Mm-hmm.
like, I think in that in between space, like, just acknowledging that that's also fine too.
Well, and I think, I mean, I don't, so I love that you said that, because I do think, you know, our conversation tends towards big dreams for business because we are entrepreneurs. But you like my biggest dream right now that seems like part of the most unattainable is a life that is like one where I'm not working my freaking butt off. Like a
Yeah.
life that is filled with relaxing moments on a beach for more than a week out of the year or so, you know, like
Yeah.
that honestly, like that's my big dream. And so like it's one of those things, of course I have like dreams and goals towards my business, but honestly, like a life filled with more balance, with more time, is something that like that seems so far away because I'm such like in the trenches of building this business and trying, you know, because I am so entrenched in these like goals and these business driven dreams that like, you know, a life that some people are like, you know, I just don't really have a purpose. I just want to enjoy my life right now. Like, yeah, that's a dream too, in my opinion. And that's a freaking big dream to me. Like it's so big I can't even talk about it right now. You
Yeah.
know? So I think, yeah, I love that you said that and you called it out because of the way that we tend to talk about it. But yeah, I still think like I personally think that everyone is capable of having a big dream. It's just how you're labeling it and giving yourself the permission to talk about it as a big dream. Or, you know, like we all have big dreams and big visions. For you in a moment, it could have been not business related or anything like that, but you still had one.
Right.
You wanted to enjoy your life at that moment. That's a big dream. So I think that that's like an important thing of like giving yourself the permission to call like your just regular old thoughts a big dream. If that's what's like, you know, encouraging you to move forward. And it's semantics, it's language, it's not, you know what I mean? But like when you
Yeah.
think about that, it's like we've got to start small. And so if you start with like, oh, my goal is to blah blah blah, and you start calling it a dream, you know, you're kind of like increasing that permission level, I think.
Yeah. You know, I think it also helps, like, you know, you were saying you and I were talk about big dreams because as business owners, we tend to have these big visions for where we want
Mhm.
this to go, right?
Mhm.
But the other thing too is I think that's a blessing as well, that I've met so many people with that mindset, and with
Mm.
people who are working on themselves, and people who are, I am very well surrounded by people who believe in me, so that when I say something
Mhm.
like, this is where I see my next book going, they're like, absolutely. Like, there's no doubts
Yep.
being thrown at me. So I think the other really important piece is that if you are a big dreamer, finding other big dreamers to share those big dreams with. I don't really share my
Mhm.
manifestations and my big dreams and my visions for myself with people who are going to throw doubt at me. And every
Yeah.
time I do, I regret it. Every single
Mhm.
time, like, I was super excited about something that's happening for me a couple weeks ago, and I shared it with somebody who doesn't dream as big or is a little bit more of a negative person, but somebody who I really care about. And they were just had no response, and I'm like, oh wow, like, did you hear what I said? Like, this is a really big deal, and I wanted them to be as excited as I was, and it for a minute did impact the way I felt about where I knew I was going. And
Mhm.
so when you're sharing your big dreams, you want to make sure you're sharing them with people who are willing to get it, or willing to support you, are willing to, even if they don't get it, send positive thoughts, because that matters. Like when we're already dealing with, I was talking about how we've got these big dreams, but we've also got big doubts. When we have these two parts of ourselves that are kind of like battling, it's
Mm-hmm.
so important that we have people who are speaking life into the big dreams and not into the big doubts.
Mm, yeah, so, so important. And honestly, like, it's taken me years, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way of like actually crafting that circle of people that are gonna dream big with you, or at least support your dream, whether or not they're doubting it.
Yeah.
Um, but but I think, and so that's like a huge thing too of like, if you find that you're in that situation of life where you just feel like you can't really share that kind of information with anyone around you, then that's also like a cue too of like there are people around you, or there are people that exist that would be gung ho for you in your dreams, no matter how crazy they seem. They exist. So if you don't have them in your life, it's time to go find them. And also, if you don't have them in your life, it's time to keep those dreams quiet and just put your head down and just go after them. And along that way, you'll start to attract the people that are there that are going to support those big dreams too. You're just going to find them. They're just going to show up.
I think too, I just want to acknowledge, because you have such a interesting story, like this beautiful company that you created wouldn't exist without the hard times that you went through. And so I think it's just another beautiful reminder that those hard times that we go
Mm,
through unlock who we're meant to be in many
mhm.
cases.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for doing that. It's yeah, I mean, and I kind of alluded to it already, but basically in a 2-year time span, I had lost my dad, and then my husband told me he wanted a divorce, and I was with him for 15 years.
Yeah.
And so in the span of 2 years, I had lost the two most impactful men of my life. Like I was a daddy's girl through and through. And then obviously, and I was a like, dedicated wife to a marriage. And so obviously, like I went to my husband for that kind of support and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was really in losing them that I, found my bottom, if you will, of terms of like, our journey, and found myself just like at my rock bottom that I didn't know where to go from there. Um, and yeah, it was through those hard times. So, if you are in a state where you like look around at your circle and you're like, wait, no one here is supporting my dreams, that could be something where you are at the bottom right now. And it is time to start to figure out what up looks like. Because that's the other thing. Like when you're at the bottom, you don't know where to go, you don't know what it looks like. And so just like trying out all of these different little things, and just seeing what works and what's going to get you out of that bottom, I think is a huge part of the journey and kind of refinding yourself again. So.
Now, at our Clarity Connects event, you brought up this brilliant idea of the happiness piggy bank. And I think I would love for you to share that, because I think that's such a powerful just way of thinking about putting moments of happiness into your life.
Yeah, so so this was a part of me just trying to figure it out, as I alluded to, being in the bottom of my, being at my rock bottom, just trying to figure out what up looked like. And basically, like, I was just at this point where, again, I was just so ridden with grief, that, like, I was like, wait a minute, like, if I don't do something for myself, that's like for myself, it's going to make me happier in this moment. I don't know how I'm going to get to 2 p.m.
Yeah.
And so I would basically like, I'm like, okay, if I go and get myself a latte right now, like that's going to make me happy. I'm going to go do that. And then I'm going to like, because I did that for myself, I'm going to be able to get through my day. And whether I got through the day, it didn't matter. I got through that next hour or whatever it was. And that was enough to like, and to get me through. And so I realized that I was going to do that every single day, that became my survival, because like I would do it sporadically, and it's something that started to work for me. And I was like, wait, this is working. And so I also just ended up, I wrote a chapter in a book called Sacred Spaces that just launched. And I go into this in a little bit more detail of this happiness piggy bank, and, the journey of kind of even how I got there. But it was one where I realized if I wake up every single day and I ask myself, what am I going to do today to make me happy? That was a huge, powerful shift in my mindset. and in my life, frankly. And so what I did was I would wake up every day and I would make that decision of what I was going to do every day or that day to make me happy. And sometimes it was getting myself a latte, like I talked about. Other times it was going out for a walk at a certain time that I decided. Like, there's a lot of like me becoming my own person in this process that happened because I wasn't going to do something that made someone else happy. I was going to do something that made me happy. And, we talk about this happiness, and I feel like happiness sometimes gets like a bad rap, if you will, because it's kind of like shallow and it's just like for the moment. But when I tell you that creating moments that make you happy are probably some of the most powerful things you can do for yourself, because it literally lifts your mood, and that's going to help you get through this moment. And so the happiness piggy bank is one where every day you make a deposit into this figurative bank, your figurative happiness piggy bank. And so some days that looks like putting a penny in because it's, writing in your journal that day, or making time to meditate, something that doesn't cost a lot, that doesn't take a lot of time. Other days it could be a little bit more planned out. It could be a massage that you go for because you're going to treat your mind and your body together and you're going to rehab. Other days it could be a freaking $100 bill and it's a trip to Bali. I don't know.
Yeah.
But basically, like, it's all of these things. And so the idea of, if you think about a piggy bank in a child's room, eventually that piggy bank is going to get knocked over. It's just going to happen. And so if you are taking time to make those deposits every single day, when it gets knocked over, it's not going to be something where it's completely shattering your life, because you have the tools and the patterns and the habits in place to get back up and to keep on going. And they don't take a lot of time, and it's not a lot of effort because you've kind of pulled that in. Whereas, like, I was coming from a place where my piggy bank had just been totally shattered.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out how to rebuild it and then figure out this little piggy bank concept. And like I said, it wasn't a concept that was completely ironed out and metaphored, if you will, during the days. It was just one of those, how am I going to survive today? So this idea of that, by making daily deposits into your overall health, whether that's your mind, your body, or your spirit, those deposits over time are going to add up. And then you get to that point where your piggy bank is now overflowing and you've got room to give. You've got room for those little things to come and knock yourself over, but you can keep get back up and keep on going.
I love this idea, and I think it's going to help a lot of people, because I think a lot of times people have this correlation with the future when it comes to happiness of, okay, when I get here, or when I get done with this, or when I get the laundry all squared away, like I'll be happier, have more time. Like, it's always like a waiting game. And I love that you're kind of designing this happiness piggy bank as like, this is a now moment thing. This is about getting to the next moment. And I have to tell you, one of my silliest, like, but favorite or happiness piggy bank deposits. I love Disney. Big Disney person. And every time I'm at Disney, the whole time I'm there, I'm like, I'm going to have a Mickey ice cream every single day. Like, that's like my favorite. And it's like, I don't even care. I don't, whatever, this is what we're doing. And I recently, like a couple months ago, discovered that they have them at Target.
Oh,
and so now I keep them in my freezer. And it's like, if I need a little pick-me-up, or I've been working really hard on something, or even sometimes when I'm feeling a little defeated around a project I'm working on or something that's not working out, it's like, Mickey ice cream is there. And so it's like just a little like additive into my day that just brings me joy. And because I have it when I'm at Disney and it's just so much, fun with the kids there, that it just brings that joy right back. Not, saying go eat your feelings, but that's just a little moment of joy.
Yeah.
That I use on a regular basis in my life, because it just makes me feel like a little kid again, and it feels really good. So I think these are like totally doable things. Going to grab a latte, taking a few minutes to meditate. Self-care doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be expensive. And I think that the way that like Instagram or like social media in general is selling self-care is that we have to do way too much. It doesn't have to be that. And that's like one of the things that I'll always preach and emphasize on my platforms, is that self-care is just valuing yourself, keeping promises to yourself, and showing up for yourself in whatever way you feel you need that day, to whatever capacity you're able to do that day. Whatever might feel nice that day,
going for it. If you have the extra to splurge on massage or a trip, awesome. If you're like, I literally just need to sit in my car for 5 minutes before walking into the daycare center, that's fine too. Like, just giving yourself the extra time or moments that you need to breathe, to exist, and to create just a little bit of joy for those bigger, harder moments. I love this conversation, Beth. This is so fun.
Yay! Good. I'm so glad. Yeah, and I honestly, and that's and what's so funny is that's where the candle concept came from, was like lighting that candle for me was just such a moment. Like it was like that 5 minutes before walking into daycare. It was just that moment, the strike of the match, like the hearing of the flame, like just and then just like taking in the scent was just like a moment for me that I like dove into time and time again. Like that was like my penny deposit, you know? I just like took that and like made it sort of like a ritual. And yeah, it wasn't expensive. It didn't take a long time, and it was just something that got me through, along with all of those other things that I talked about. So definitely you can create that. And that's the thing, you get to decide. So every day I woke up and asked myself what would make me happy. So I didn't ask anybody else, and it wasn't anyone else's opinions. And most people didn't even know that I was doing it.
Yeah.
Like people like on the outside, like going to get a latte, like that's fine. And also, like if you don't have that intention, like you go to get a latte every day at Starbucks. I don't care. Like if you've got the funds to do that and that's what you want to do, go for it. But when I made it that was my moment, that was the moment that I claimed was going to make me happy in that day, you can bet your bottom dollar that latte became the most special thing of that day.
Yeah.
Compared to any other day where like I'm just like, yeah, I'm tired, I'm just gonna go get a little afternoon pick me up. It was fine. Like it's setting that intention creates such a different aspect to that moment and to what you're going to be doing. And it's powerful. And I love your Mickey Mouse ice cream. And like I like it here, like it's not eating my feelings, because like it didn't even sound like that. Like it sounded like the most magical like ice cream that you could potentially get because of like the memories and everything that it associated with. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess it could be looked at as eating your feelings, but it didn't come across like that at all, because it was just like so magical to you. And like lifting your mood is such a powerful thing, and it's just something like you have the right to do it and you can do it. So go for it, you know?
Yeah, my whole like mission is to debunk feeling better, because I think it's become this big thing. So I think this conversation is going to be extremely valuable to everybody who, takes the time to listen to it. But where can they find your candles and where can they find you?
Thank you very much. So I am on social media at State of Being Co. And then we are also online at stateofbeingco.com. So pretty easy, pretty consistent.
Yeah. And I will link that in the description of this podcast. You guys can click right on it and get right to it, because when I say these candles smell amazing, you're going to want to pick one up. I know they were a huge, huge hit at Clarity Connects. And yeah, we're so excited. And I'm so appreciative to have you on, Beth. I love your story. I love everything you stand for. And thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thank you. Oh my gosh, it's been amazing. And honestly, I'm going to take that little Mickey Mouse ice cream story with me, because that was.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rock Your Soul book and podcast. Take a moment to book a one-on-one session with me or purchase my trainings at NicoleEaton.com. Join the Rock Your Soul Facebook group or follow me on Instagram at NicoleEaton.xo. And if you loved this podcast, don't forget to share it. Thank you.